Okay, so today we're going to look at some digital and paper aids, just a couple of very usual things that you might run into in project management. So last time we talked about taking a task, taking a project, breaking it down into tasks that you could handle, and we're going to look further into that. We'll learn some new stuff along the way. But this is basically about putting together the organization for that in the first place, and then the last part will be on the status report, which you will use, which is a way of tracking how things are going. So the first thing we'll look at is project management software. Specifically, I'm going to be running Microsoft Project. There are a lot of other things on the market that you can use. Apparently this one doesn't work so well on Apple machines, but is available in the Windows labs in ECF. So this program in a newer form actually is available to you. Where does it happen again? This particular part happens in the planning stage. So that's the dark yellow part over at the right there. So about the time when you're putting together a technical design and getting started. There are a few, as I said, other project management software out there, some specific to various industries and some more general. Microsoft Project was brought out as a relatively inexpensive substitute for some of the much costlier pieces of software that's out there. So, and I've used it in many projects. It's extremely useful, and so it's certainly one of the ones that I think is important. Okay, so we're starting a new project. There's always a sort of a preliminary part, a setup part. You say that you're starting a new project. You set some kind of project start date. So you figure out when you're actually going to start doing the work. And at that point, you start putting things in. And you put in the activities, the tasks, and with those tasks, you associate some sorts of timing and resources, and you also apply an order to them. And you, in terms of the resources, you have to worry about availability, you have to worry about cost, and so on. So that can all go in. So we're going to see a number of various concepts with this. The idea of predecessor, the idea of slack, which we covered already, the idea of critical path, which we've covered already, but we'll see how it works here. Tasks and subtasks and milestones, we've looked at those. A few things concerning resources like over-allocation and leveling will be new, so we'll look at those as well. Okay, so I'm going to switch over and we're going to look at an example here. Ta-da, there we are. Okay. So you're seeing what I'm seeing here. And what this is a project to put together, there it goes, to put together a something like a bathroom. Okay, so first thing we do is we put in all of the tasks. These things come up at the left here. You can see that the insertion of tasks and so on is fairly straightforward, so I won't go over that. After you have all of your tasks put together here, you put in a duration. So the duration in this case is days. You could have hours. It also allows for things like weeks. So you put in how long it's going to take. None of this stuff takes very long to actually put in, as you'll see. The real problem with all of this is not something that's you'll find, in fact, it's more difficult than you think, and it's finding out what the tasks are, first breaking it down. Secondly, being able to figure out how long those tasks are going to take, because typically you will underestimate the amount of time you're going to take for them. And the other thing is figuring out the order in which it all has to happen. So even though the actual concepts are not all that difficult, the data that you put in is sometimes very difficult to generate. Okay, so we're putting in a washroom. We have to first of all build the walls, rough in the walls, and then when the walls are in, we can put in the plumbing. Let's say the plumbing is going to take 3 days. Say we're going to take 2 days to put in the plumbing. The plumbing inspection, whoops, invalid duration, of course. Oh, I see what's happened here. Let's see if it accepts that. Nope. Okay, there we go. The plumbing inspection is going to be something that's maybe going to take a day. So we'll say it takes a day. Once the plumbing inspection is done, we can close up the walls. That maybe takes 2 days. Finishing the electrics, we'll say takes 4 days, just to pick a number. We need to build cabinetry. Cabinetry is going to take us a while, so let's say 6 days for cabinetry. Then we finish it off, which means installing it and so on. That'll take 2 days once it's ready. Put a day to put in the final fittings. Let's say a day to install the tub. A day to finish up the final lighting. The final inspection, say, takes 2 days, and the final electrical inspection takes a couple of days. And, whoops, where did we go? Okay, and I'm going to put another task in just here at the end, which is going to be just done. Let's see, what am I doing? So here's a new task, and it's done. Now, done is a milestone. Okay, done is not something that's going to take any effort, but it's an indication that there's time. Milestones are put in as 0-day events, and you can see we get that little diamond there. Okay, so that's basically put in the duration. So we know how long various things are going to take, but you can see they all start at the same time, which we know is wrong. And the reason it's wrong is because we can't do all of those things simultaneously. We have these things called predecessors. So, for instance, to put in the electrical wiring, we first have to have the walls in. So if you look over here at the left, you'll see the various tasks are numbered. And so in this program, you put in predecessors by indicating what numbered task precedes the task with this predecessor. So in this case, roughing in the plumbing requires building the walls first, so we put in a 1 in the predecessors, and you can see what happens over here on our chart. You can see that the roughing in the electrics had to come after building the walls. Now, we can rough in the plumbing at the same time as we rough in the electrics. That means just putting the stuff in the background, okay? Roughing it in means putting in the wires that are going inside the walls. And roughing in the plumbing is putting in the plumbing that goes underneath the floors and behind the walls and so on. Okay, so the plumbing as well has to wait for the walls, but it doesn't have to wait for the electrics. So we put that in. Then we have a plumbing inspection, and the plumbing inspection has to come after the rough-in. Once the plumbing inspection is done and the other things are done, we can finish the walls. So we can finish the walls after the plumbing inspection and after we've roughed in the electrics. So let's see what happens there. You can see actually two things. One is that we skipped the weekend because nobody works on the weekend, right? Sure. Around here we work a lot of weekends, but normal people don't. So for normal people, the finishing of the walls, in fact, has to wait till Monday. And you can see that as well it's been bumped up because the finishing of the walls happened, the finishing of the walls happened after both of these two things, okay? Finishing the electrics depends on finishing the walls. Building the cabinetry we can start right away. Now here, you can see it takes 6 days, but the actual line here is more than 6 days, and that's because it includes that weekend where nobody works. So we build the cabinetry. We can't finish the cabinetry until the walls are done, and we can't finish the cabinetry until after we've built it. So we put in 2 more precedents there. You can see those. Installing the plumbing fittings will come after the walls are done as well. Installing the tub will come after the walls. Installing the final lighting will come after we've finished the electrics. The final inspection will involve after the installation of the electrics, after the tub, after the plumbing fittings, not the cabinetry. And once that's done, we can do an electrical inspection. I'm sort of making this up on the fly a little bit. And the done here, I hope you can see that. The done means we've done the final inspections. We have we've installed all the lightings and things, so I think that'll be enough. We'll see in a second. Okay, so after all of that's done, we're done out here. So that's basically how our project looks now, our bathroom project looks. And now things are set up so that they're done in an order, provided we get all our resources in place before all of this happens. We should be finished. If we started in October 3rd, then we'll be finished October, what's that going to be, 26th or something like that. So all of that's good. That helps. Now some things can't be done right away after something else. There's something called a lag. In this particular program, I can double-click on a link. That brings up a task dependency. So there is a task dependency between building the cabinetry and finishing the cabinetry. And let's just say there's an extra 3 days required in there where nobody has to be working on it or anything. It's just a delay. Because sometimes there's a delay in between tasks. Maybe you're having to order something or wait for something to arrive. And so that comes in. So we put in what's called a lag. And a lag, what it does is it pushes, you can see here's the lag, and it's pushed that task across and over to here. Now that task obviously should be involved in the final inspection or the finished 8. So task 8 I'll add to the done list of predecessors here so we get the right arrow coming in. That makes sense. Okay, now you can see that it's all interconnected. And that's one of the things you should look for, is to make sure that all of your tasks are interconnected down to the final done milestone. Okay, so that's tasks. We've put in durations, we've put in predecessors, we've looked at lag. Now let's look at critical path. So in this particular thing, we do view tracking Gantt, and let's find it here. There we are. And you can see that red? That red is the critical path. And what it's saying is that building the cabinetry here, yeah, I think you can still see those. Building the cabinetry isn't on the critical path because we have slack in that. But building the walls, which was essential to getting started for most of the stuff, is on the critical path. And so if we go to building the walls, if we go to the building walls task and we increase the duration, this is another way of getting to the same information. So say we go to 6 days to build the walls, then everything gets moved across. You can see all of the critical path got moved across. Whereas if we take building cabinetry, okay, if we click on that one, and it was already 6 days, say it takes 7, no change, right? The building cabinetry moved out, but the others didn't. Okay, so let's go back to our regular view again. So that's critical path. All of these things will show you some sort of critical path in some ways. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to enter resources. So I think that's here. Yep, there it is. So we go in here and we say, okay, we need a carpenter to build our walls. And in this program, carpenter now appears beside the bar in the Gantt chart. Rough in the electrics requires an electrician. Roughing in the plumbing requires a plumber. Plumbing inspection, we don't need anyone. Finishing the walls requires our carpenter again. Now you see this pull down. In this particular case, I can just pull down. Finishing the electrics needs the electrician. Building the cabinetry needs the carpenter. Finishing the cabinetry needs the carpenter. Installing the plumbing needs the plumber. Installing the tub is the plumber. Installing the final lighting is the electrician. So you can assign each of your team members to a certain task in this way. Final inspection, electrical inspection, and done. Don't need anybody. Okay, so here we are. We now have resources applied to all of these things. But look at the carpenter, okay? The carpenter is working here on the walls, and at the same time the carpenter is working on the cabinetry. Now, assuming that we only have one carpenter, we're in trouble. The way we can see that is to look up here at resources. View resource graph. Okay, so here's the carpenter. Let's see if I can find out where here we are, and you can see those red bars there. Those red bars say the carpenter is over-allocated. The carpenter basically is working more than he should be in that certain thing. I worked for a place at one point, and I was helping with the development work, and there were a lot of projects going on. And every time anyone asked, okay, so the president of the company kept saying, how much time, if I asked you to do this project, could you get it done by April? And somebody was, you know, the person running the development teams said, oh, sure. And then the president would come again and say, I've got this other project, can you get it done by May? And the guy would say, oh, sure. And what he really meant is if I took all my resources and applied them to that project, we could get done by May. But the one that needed to be done by April would then not get done by April. The president of the company just did not understand this at all. And so this went on for a short period of time, and I thought, this is absolutely crazy. So I sat down with Microsoft Project. I was a VP of this company at this point, and I started banging the projects in. And I found out that certain people in the place were well, I was on the lighter side because I kept saying no, realizing what was happening. I was only over-allocated by a factor of 7. There were people over-allocated by a factor of 15. So clearly, things were going to fall through the cracks, and in fact, as you might have expected, most of the projects got partway started and certainly weren't finished by their end date. And it made perfect sense because nobody can work more than one place at one time. So anyway, our poor carpenter here is over-allocated. So what do we do? Well, let's go back to our Gantt chart so we can see what's going to happen. We can go to Tools, Level Resources, and you can have this happen automatically. In a lot of programs will do it automatically. I've deliberately set it on manual so that you could see this. Okay, so we go here and we say Level Now. Now watch what happens to our Gantt chart. Boom. Okay? A couple of things have happened. The carpenter is no longer working on two things in this initial period. You can see the build cabinetry, he works on it for a while and then he stops and he moves up to finish walls. Why does he move up to finish walls? Because finish walls is on the critical path. Okay? He has to finish the walls or a lot of other stuff doesn't get done. The cabinetry can wait. So automatically, Microsoft Project has said, okay, the carpenter works for a while on the cabinets, but then switches over to the walls and finishes those up so other people can keep going. So it does maximize the time. You can now see that the done has been moved way out here to the 30th or 30 into October, might even be into November at this point. And let's look at our allocation graph, our resource sheet, our resource graph. And you can see that the carpenter is no longer over-allocated. That's because we've done this leveling. Okay, that's what it's called. So we've done the leveling. And so now the carpenter isn't over-allocated. In fact, nobody's over-allocated. A few more things to show you here. Let's go back to our Gantt chart. We can put in, a new task here, and this task will be cabinets. Now the cabinets here what I'm going to do is take those two, and I think I've got this right. What I did was I took the two things that had to do with cabinets and I highlighted them both and I said indent over here at the top. So there'll be some sort of way of doing this. And what this has done is created a subgroup of tasks known as the cabinet, known as a major task. These are subtasks of that major task, okay? And what I can do in terms of viewing it is I can actually condense it so that the cabinets now are taken off my Gantt chart and they're summarized in that one big bar. I've shown you the details of the task. You can change start dates and end dates. You can track percentages here. So if I say that a task is 50% done, then you can see that little bar that's coming across here where my cursor is in plumbing inspection. So you can actually show a completion and track that. You can look at resources. So if I click on a resource name, I can look at the resources for the carpenter and I can change them from 100% to something else. I can look at a resource sheet here, and I hope you can see this, but it has our 3 resources. It has how much the resource can work, and if I had 2 carpenters, in fact, what I could do is say, I now have something that works 200%, right? 2 carpenters work as 200%. I have a standard rate, I have an overtime rate, I have a cost per use, and I can change their calendar. So if my carpenter happens to work on weekends, I can change a calendar, put in a calendar that allows weekend work and holiday work and so on. Okay? So all of that's in there. So that's basically how you can set things up. You can then print out your Gantt charts. Whoop. Caught here. You can print out your Gantt charts and make all that go. Okay, so I'm going to flip back to either laptop here. That was our example. We'll just go through this whole thing again. So we start by entering tasks. We can see that we then enter the durations, so we can have days or hours or whatever. Question mark at the end of it means it's an estimate or some sort of ballpark you're not sure about. Milestones are set up as 0-time events. So that's entering the durations. You can then enter the predecessors. That's what creates that spreading in the Gantt chart. You could put in lag and lead. So double click on the link, and in Microsoft Project there'll be other ways, of course. In fact, most of these programs have 2 or 3 different ways of entering information. So that double click on the link in Microsoft Project to put in some kind of delay between tasks. Critical path. Sometimes it comes up automatically. Sometimes you've got to ask for it specifically. In Microsoft Project, it says tracking Gantt is how to get that up. And you can see, you can actually get it in some of the advanced ones to show you the slack. Those are the number of days there. So that's critical path. You can put in the resources and it'll remember and give you a drop-down list. We talked about resource over-allocation. So here's a resource graph with over-allocation. And how you get rid of that is by doing leveling. So you use tools, go into resource leveling. Again, often these things will automatically level, so as you enter data and set up predecessors, it will move things around. Okay, we talked about tasks getting split and delayed, and about the project moving to later when you do the leveling. Okay, and looked at that. We talked about making a hierarchical task. So again, there are several ways of doing it. I showed you one in the example. Another way here is task summary. Okay, and that gives you the bars. It allows you to condense a very dense project into bars and bars of bars and bars and bars of bars and so on. And finally, resource sheets. So all of this is moderately useful if you're doing a smallish project. If you're doing a bigger project, like for instance an airport, then it becomes absolutely critical, because something like an airport, if you think about it, it's kind of like the university. It has its own sewage system, its own fire system, its own policing system, and on and on and on and on. You've got a tremendous amount of things that have to happen, and in a sort of a small space. So you end up with schedules that are tremendously complex and involved. And so it becomes absolutely critical. So you'll get some practice using these things. You'll be setting up your own schedules and so on for your own projects. There is a place here where you can look up terms, so that's useful. Okay, I want to go over just a few gotchas really quickly here. If you look at something like this, which you might have, okay, so on February 20th, you're supposed to deliver one document. On the 25th, let's say you need to deliver another one, and here are the amounts of time that you figure and the steps in order to work it. Well, there is a critical path in the sense that there's a path that's going to take you the longest. So the top one up there is going to take 5 days, but it isn't critical in the sense that it's determining where the endpoints are. Okay, it's quite possible to have no critical path in the sense of it's holding the endpoints where they are. And you'll find that when you put your things together, and the reason is that you're not working 100% on ESP. I'd imagine you're working on a lot of other courses at the same time. In fact, that would be in your best interest to do that. So what you'll find is you'll say that ESP is taking up a fifth of my time, a fifth of my available time, but because it's only a fifth, you're not going to see anything on your critical paths. So you may have to artificially put in things in order to see the critical path, or just denote the critical path by drawing over it with a marker or something, where you're asked to show the critical path. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is that these Gantt charts will go over a long period of time, and you'll find that they get gigantic, and that if you try to fit them all on a page, the print is microscopic. So, what do? You lump tasks as subtasks, and we looked at that. You can double-click in Microsoft Project and other things. You can double-click on the top line of the Gantt chart and change the scaling, so that really helps. You can change the number of tiers. You can use, when you're printing, there's a dates from and to option, and so you can just print out a certain period. So that sort of thing, that's in Microsoft Project. That's how you would put it together. Okay, so that sort of thing will allow you to make your Gantt charts usable. Just one sort of advanced concept. It's along the lines of if one person can have a baby in 9 months, it doesn't mean that 2 people can have a baby in 4.5. Okay? There's something called elapsed time. It basically says you can't beat this time because paint has to dry, concrete has to cure. There are things that happen that are physical phenomenon that you can't make better by throwing more resources at it. Okay? So that's elapsed time. You put it in as E days. You can see the top entry there is in E days, and that just means that it goes on over weekends and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's that. We're now going to shift in time from the planning part to the actual execution part. And couple more weeks, you're going to be asked to hand in a status report on your project. And what this means is that you're going to sit down with your project manager and your TAs, and you're going to say, here's where I am, here are the kinds of things the issues that I'm encountering, and here's what I'm going to do in the future. So let's go through and see how the status report looks. First of all, there's a title block, so that's pretty easy. You can fill that out. Now, then you'll report on your current state. I'll point out a few things. First of all, just because there are a certain number of places in this doesn't mean that that's how many things you have to report on. You should be adding more fields if you need more fields. If you're doing 10 tasks and have 4 fields, you add 6 fields, okay? You fill in the task name, you fill in the person assigned and due date. Sometimes it'll be completed and sometimes it won't. Okay, these are things that are being worked on currently or that got finished during the time from the last reporting period to now. So you fill all those in. Of course, you're going to have hit certain roadblocks. Some of them you will have taken care of, some have not. So there's a section here for problems encountered. Sometimes they will be team problems. Sometimes they will be problems getting information. Sometimes there will be things that you can get to or not get to, and you'll fill those in. The next is lessons learned and strategies to address problems. So how are you going to fix things? And what did you learn about those things so that maybe the next time you won't even have that problem? Okay, that's what we want to see there. So then we look into the future, and we say, what are the team decisions that have made? So what are team decisions in terms of where we're going to go next? And what are some additional comments? So you can record dates, and you can record things that are coming up that you have to pay attention to. So you put all those in. Towards the end of the session that you spend with your team and project manager, you'll fill in the last part here, and it says complete in tutorial. Okay? So your project manager has to approve that. You assign someone to do the next status report. Okay, so that person gets assigned, and then you say what other people are going to do. Now, a few notes about that. Your task can't be general, so it can't be produce the next document. Okay? Your tasks can't be assigned to everybody. So everybody researches the environmental impact. That's no good. We want individuals to be taking responsibilities for certain things. The effectiveness of a team is when the team members can go off, do individual things, and then come together and produce something cohesive by plugging in their individual parts. Okay? So we want to know what those individual things are so that when we come to you as project managers, we can find out what's going on. You want to make sure that everybody reads this, so I personally follow the following formula. I say the status report, except for that last page, has to be emailed to me 24 hours before and copied to everybody so that everybody else also sees that status report so they know what they are going to be held responsible for. So your project manager is going to handle it differently in each case. Another thing that happens quite often is that tasks sort of wither away, okay? A task may be put on one project report and is assigned to someone, and then it just kind of disappears, or it gets somehow ignored, or it didn't work out and so it's not reported on. Anything that goes into your future task assignment on that end page should be something that appears in your earlier page, the current state page, the next time round. Okay? And your project managers will look for that along the way. Okay, and that's basically it for the aids so far. I was hoping to have a few minutes to get into costing, but I don't think we have time. But I'll give you an overview of the costing thing. Basically, when you go through and look at the resources and things, yeah, just a second, please. We're not quite finished. Hello? Thank you. A little bit about costing. A couple of things that people always miss, shipping and taxes, and accidental destruction of property. So you've got to add yourself a buffer when you're doing costing. You're going to be doing costing on your projects. When you're looking at labor, when you're looking at the timing of something, the first time I was ever asked for timing, I was wrong by a factor of 2.5. Okay, the second time I was asked for timing, I was on my way to deliver the report, it was before digital stuff, about what the timing was going to be, and I thought, I am making exactly the same mistake as I made the time before, and I multiplied by 2.5, and I held my nose and handed that in, and I was perfect the second time with that factor of 2.5. I'm glad to say that I have learned an awful lot, and I can estimate my time fantastically much better, and so now I only use a factor of 1.5, because I'm still very optimistic when I actually think about how much time it's going to take me. So when you're looking at timing and costs of timing, please, put in some kind of buffer, because things are never done quite as well as we think we can do as engineers. Okay, now that's definitely it. You now can pack up and go. Thank you.